Anyway, so I told you I'm going to start working on removing my WRX transmission, which is what I'm going to do the video on today. Pretty simple and straightforward, but for those of you who may not have any idea or may not have ever done it before or may not be mechanically inclined, hopefully this will help. And I'll get going here. I bought a nice little bright light from Walmart like that I can set and change the angles and all kinds of cool stuff. Finally bought one of those. It's so handy. What I first did, guys, with my removal of the WRX transmission, there it goes rotating on me, and I don't know how to change that. There's a drain plug in the transmission. I drained that first. That's a T70 Torx socket, and I got that from Company 23. There's all kinds of places you can order them from. You probably can order them from your local auto parts store. Item number 509 from Company 23. That's where I got mine. So the drain plug looks like this, obviously with the Torx head, and there she is, right by the engine cross member. Now that I've done that, I'm going to remove my whole mid pipe. I'm going to undo it from this bracket right here. And then I'm going to undo it from the axle back over there. And I'll drop that because the drive shaft is above it. And it'll make it just a whole lot easier to remove the drive shaft. It'll just drop right out once I start dropping the transmission. I can slide the drive shaft out and then get it out. Removing the heat shield is going to be next. There's a bolt there, a bolt there, a bolt there, and a bolt there. So 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Once I do that, way up in there, I'll get to showing you, there's one bolt of the corner of the shifter box, I call it, right there. There's 4 of them up in there. You remove those and then you go up inside your car, and I'll show you how to do that and get everything out. Because you have to account for the shifter cables that go up into the shifter box. And those shifter cables are right there. And I gotta undo those from the box, and I'll show you all that. All right, so there's a center bushing support for the drive shaft that you can see when you remove the heat shield. And obviously I got my mid pipe off. There's a drive shaft into the rear differential housing. And I got the Soku solid bushings to hold that. It just solidifies the whole drive line, drive shaft. It seemed to make a little difference, I guess. Everything combined that I did helped with the handling of the car. I did all polyurethane bushings and everything, and the rear lockdown, the rear subframe lockdown and all that. There's the transmission cross member right there. That's the next thing I'm going to remove, or at least loosen with the jack and the platform underneath the transmission. I'll get going on that here. One thing I wanted to mention about this up here is when you go to loosen it, I suggest starting with your ratchet like this instead of like this, because when you start loosening it, it's pretty tight. I didn't like how this whole thing kind of bent like this way. You know what I mean? So I put my ratchet running parallel with the drive shaft, and then I loosened it, and I didn't have any of this movement here. I don't know, it just seemed like it was bending the frame here. And anyway, just a little idea of what I discovered. So I'm going to get this off. I did have a little vibration with these, if you're wondering, but I fixed it. I put some material between some very thin, like cardboard material between the bushing and this, and the vibration has never come back. It was rather annoying inside the cabin or the interior of the car. So it's just one of those things you have to like figure out. If you do these, you'll, if you can live with the vibration or if you want to fix it. But anyway, there's that, and we'll get working on getting this drive shaft out and the transmission dropped. And of course, before actually removing the transmission completely out of the car, you have this, I call it a shifter box. I don't know if that's the official term for it, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Once you open this plate, you will see in here that the shifter cables attach with these little clips, and you can pull the clips out and then remove the shifter cables, and that'll free the transmission from that, so you can, detach the transmission away from the car and pull that whole shifter box out with the shifter lever in it. You have to take that whole thing apart from the top and take it out and take it apart more to do the shift lever in the WRX. It's a kind of a pain in the butt. I had to do it when I did the Boomba short throw. Anyway, once this whole thing's out, the STI shifter mechanism is different. There's a plate and there's a rubber boot and stuff that, and you'll see that when I get to it. Anyway, wanted to show you those, and I'll show you that cables inside there and how the heck I'm going to lower this transmission out of here. Okay, so I did remove these 4 bolts for the cross member part that's toward the rear of the car. Those are 14 millimeter bolts. That dropped the transmission and drive shaft down just enough to be able to get the plate off of here, to allow the plate to drop down away from these bolts completely. When it was all the way up, the plate hit the drive shaft and did not want to come all the way off those studs there. So I got those studs off, or that plate off the studs. Transmission dropped a little bit. I don't know, not much, but enough to get that out. This linkage for the one shifter cable just pushes right off of this shaft on this lever. So I can get the light over here better. It just pushes right off. It's off. That one's easy. The other one is a white, like, it holds the bottom of the shifter lever kind of in it, and there's a clip. You can see the clip, kind of, you see that metal clip on the end there grabbing, and it separates on that end, and I'll get that off and show you how that works. You can see that clip a whole lot better from this angle, and you just have to finagle it off of there with it's pretty, it's not real stiff. You just bend it out of the way and pop that clip off. Then you can get that white piece off of like the end ball of the shifter lever. We'll try to do it here with one hand, or maybe I can set the phone down in such a way to see it. No, I'm not going to even try it. So let's see. This is where I need a GoPro or whatever, so you can see me doing it, but you get the idea. The clip wraps around the whole plastic piece, and once you loosen, push these away, once you push them away, and you can pull that whole clip out. You can figure it out when you get to that point. It's not really hard. So yeah, it'll be self-explanatory, guys. That whole clip wraps around that plastic piece. You'll see how it is, and there's a groove on each side of that plastic piece. You can kind of see the grooves on the end there. Once you push that sucker and you separate it on the end here, it pops up and you slide it right off. And then this whole piece falls off of the, you can see the plastic bushing on the bottom of the shifter lever. Right there. And that's the bottom of your shifter lever. Sorry for the blinking light. It's not a fancy camera, guys. I apologize. But there you go. Then you can undo these flat clips, that one there, and that one there. You pull those down, then you can remove the shables. Listen to me. You can remove the cables completely out of that shifter mechanism box, that shifter box. So once inside the car, you got to get, these pry tools are so handy. You get it between here and here. This lifts right up. It kind of feels like it's going to break. It does feel like it's going to break, but might have to do it two hands. It's in there pretty tight. So that's pried and one side's out. Man, that's really in there. It still feels like it's going to break. And it's loose. You gotta pull pretty hard. And then, of course, undo your shift knob. Yeah, I splurged on my... I splurged for myself and spent too much money on... on a shift knob, but man, it was worth it. And then you got to finagle this off of here past the reverse lockout. Hard to do one-handed, kind of. There we go. Now, down in here are 4 bolts. There's one there, one at the top corner, one in that top left corner, and one right straight down there. I noticed underneath, 3 of the nuts came off on the other side of those bolts, but that one right there, it just spun. So I'm going to have to either have my wife or a buddy come and hold that bolt on the top to get that plastic, like, shifter box part from underneath the car. But once you get that out, showed you those 4 bolts. I haven't removed those yet, but because I'm going to remove this whole piece here. But first, before you remove this, you have to remove the center console piece. So there's a screw underneath your e-brake boot to get the e-brake boot out. It was a little hard with my different leather piece here because this leather's stiffer, but on the regular black material that's on there, it's really easy to pull up, and you just pull it straight up, and then you can kind of go down on the sides here with one of these wonderful tools and just sort of pry it away from this, and then it pulls straight up and out. Okay. And then there's a screw right there you have to get out. And then down in here, underneath that felt, move that felt out of the way, and you got 2 screws right there. I like to use an extension with a 10mm to get those out. And then the whole piece will pull out of the way. And then you can pull straight back on this whole piece, and you have to use some good force, but it will pop out, and then you'll have the room you need to get this whole assembly out. So once you got that screw out over here and you got the 2 bolts out in the center console, you you just pull that center console up and back out of the way. I'm going to put the whole new STI center console so I can put the SI control right there where that is in the STI console, so I can operate the driver controlled center diff on the STI. I figured I'm doing all this stuff, I might as well have the controls with it. Let's go all the way, right? And then yeah, I chew. You probably saw my Copenhagen there. I've been chewing since I was in the Marines in the guy 92. Anyway, so grab this sucker with both hands and just pull straight back. Boom. And it pulls out like that. Again, it's going to feel like it's going to break probably, but most likely you won't break it. It just pulls straight out. And then kind of pull it up and the heck out of the way. There's a little plug down here, so you'll have to unplug that. And once you unplug that, you can get it completely out of your way if you want, or just sort of leave it dangling over here out of the way. I'm just going to leave it there out of the way for now. Then what you want to do, you see the little tab there and the little tab there, that you squeeze those with some needle nose, and then you can get the wire harness. The wire harness is actually attached to this whole piece that you want to pull out. So let's see. I'm just going to do this real quick. Hopefully real quick, right? Sometimes these things are harder than you think they're going to be. Got that one out. And good. So you want to pull these yellow wires out of the way. It's kind of blurry, sorry guys. But I mean, you don't need to see it 100% clear because you know what I'm talking about. There, now those clips are out of the piece. Then I'm going to undo that one darn bolt and nut that's kind of spinning, and then I'll be able to pull this whole assembly out. Okay, so still having fun here. I got the 4 big bolts out right down there. You can see that go in those big holes. Those 1, 2, 3, and then on the 4th one I got a pair of vice grips I squeezed on there. They kind of barely fit in there, but I got it. There's one nut under there. Like I said, the whole thing is spinning. Of course, it's always one, right? So I'm gonna go under and see if I can loosen that dumb thing. I don't know why. Well, it's to hold that bottom piece on, is why. Anyway, I'm gonna go under here, see if I can get this freaking thing. Hopefully the vice grips are on there tight enough to hold it on, or to stop it from spinning. There we are, right there, that one. And let's see how it goes. Come on, baby. How tight is this stupid thing? Jeez. Oh, I think I got it. Yay. It's always one, right? If there could be 30 things, like 30, let's say there's like 18 head bolts on a car. Not, 17 will come off good, and then the 18th one will be messed up. Or header bolts, say there's 12 or 16 of those boogers, and then there it went. Yay, good. Now I can take the whole thing out from up top there, and I should be able to also pull this. Well, I don't know. That black box is fastened in there. Nope, it's not. So Looks like this is gonna drop right out pretty much. And yeah, there it went. That dropped down now. And that whole top piece is loose. And yeah. Oh, getting old, guys. I'm 47, and I definitely I can feel that I'm not, 24 anymore. There we go. By the way, guys, there's 2 screws that I forgot to mention. One right here and one right there that screw into this one and this one on this whole piece. And you got to get those out too. You lift it up and kind of slide it forward and to get it out from under all that plastic, and then it'll come out. So there we go. Got her. You can see that. Oh, that black plastic thing right here. You can see the. Wow, I left that light on there under there, didn't I? This is that one that had that weird clip on it. This is the one that just popped right off the shaft on the other, on the mechanism on this wonderful shift mechanism. All right, so there it is, guys. Now I'll work on actually dropping the transmission. All right. So this bolt here and that bolt right there. These 2 bolts and those 2 bolts on the cross member. Those are the only bolts that support the transmission once the engine's off. So it's definitely obviously a little different doing the STI transmission swap with the engine in the car. You have to, shimmy and shake and pry the transmission away from the engine. I already did that while I pried the engine away from the transmission. That was a pain. I had to make a custom little really flat, like almost like a blade from a chisel to get it between the engine and the transmission. I kept dropping the engine with a jack supporting the transmission way up front there. And when I pulled it out and got enough space to put that piece I made down in there and pry it apart, it was harder than I thought it would be. But anyway, so this thing dropped with the shifter cable connections. I didn't take them out of this thing. It's all attached to the transmission. I'll just pull the whole thing out. So there's that. And also, I have these really nice jack stands that I got from US Jack. I'm using this one to hold up the drive shaft since I undid the center bushing support, the drive shaft carrier support bushing. And there you go. So next I'm going to also show you, don't forget this. When you're pulling this transmission out, you want to not forget that grounding wire right there. That's attached down, runs down and attaches the transmission down there. So don't forget to detach that, because you'll be fighting that and you'll be going, what the heck is holding this transmission in? So don't forget that. I haven't undone it yet, but I'm gonna. And yeah, so here we go. Soon I'll work on getting that thing lowered and out of there. And just to, since we were looking at that part, I had forgotten what I did to stop that vibration sound. I took some 3M vinyl wrap and I made my own little tiny thin, not tiny, but really thin O-ring, and I put some of that thick polyurethane bushing grease in there. That stopped the vibration. And you saw that the other piece is like jammed in there still. I couldn't get it out by hand. But anyway, just in case you're wondering about that, since that's kind of a aftermarket part, it is an aftermarket part. And if you're wondering what the heck I was talking about, it wasn't a cardboard piece. It was that. It's been, I don't know, over a year and I forgot. Anyway, so if you do that, put a thin piece of something between this bushing and the metal cross member part of the carrier bushing. Anyway, next step coming soon. So this is the transmission engine separation tool I made. I took a 1-inch wood hole drilling bit. I got like 40 of them laying around or something. So I took one and sacrificed one, and I ground it, used my grinder, ground it down so it's more like a blade as close as possible, and got a little bit of space between the engine and transmission by dropping the engine down with the hoist with the transmission supported underneath right near the engine cross member. And I kept doing that. I did it like 20 times, and finally I got a little space, like maybe a couple business card thick space, and I hammered this down in there, and it still was a chore, and I finally got the engine and transmission separated. So again, it'll be probably a little different as far as separating the transmission from the engine if you're doing the STI transmission swap with your engine in the car. I think it's a pain either way, getting it separated, either taking the transmission away from the engine or the engine away from the transmission. I sprayed a good amount of PB Blaster all down in there and near where the dowel pins are and all that, but it was still hard. So anyway, what I did for right now, and I made this jack for the transmission, but I raised the car up so high that it won't even touch the bottom of the transmission. I need to get a jack that goes like 25 inches high or something like that, and I still have to order that. But so here you can see I used like an 8x8 block and then a freaking 4x4. That's right by the cross member. I had to lift the transmission up to clear the cross member. You can see up in there, it's barely clearing, not barely, but it's clearing the cross member in there, so I can pull the transmission forward and get the doggone drive shaft out. Same with this jack, not tall enough, and it's just the way it goes. You can see way up in there, the transmission is going to clear that engine cross member for me to move it forward. Now, how I'm going to move it forward with both these jacks and all this 2x4s and wood underneath there, I don't know. I'm kind of puzzling over it right now. But the transmission is completely loose and free. I just got to figure out how to get this drive shaft. I really don't feel like pulling off the rear end and all that and undoing the axles from the wheels yet, just to pull the transmission out. I really want to get this thing out and get it over to the side of the car. But hope this video has helped you guys so far, and I'll get going on getting this transmission forward and getting that thing out of there, that drive shaft out of there. Okay, so I got 3 of the 4 yoke nuts off here. 12 millimeter, or what these are. 12 millimeter felt a little loose, but it felt like the best size. So if you don't get the drive shaft off this part first, then you can just take a hammer and put the wrench on there and then just smack it on the end of the wrench, give it a good sharp smack, and it'll loosen it as you turn the drive shaft to get to each nut. It's It's not that bad. And let's get this last one off here. And there's the drive shaft. Yay. And there's my two jacks that are both too low. They don't go high enough. And of course, the transmission back up there. And yeah, getting there. So the heat shield bolts, 12 millimeter socket. The rear part of the cross member for the transmission is going to be 14 millimeter, those 4 bolts. The front 2 bolts of the transmission cross member are 17 millimeter, 2 of them. And then the cross member bolts that hold the cross member to the transmission are 14. And then there's 2 nuts that hold the cross member to, like, the underneath the transmission, there's that smaller mount. You can get the Group N or an aftermarket one, or the factory one is kind of weak. And that's holding the cross member to that piece. That's the piece that has like the bushing in it. The bigger bushing. Those are 14 millimeter. So yeah. And then the ground wire coming from the transmission to the chassis in the front of the firewall is 10 millimeter. There we go. So those are the 2 14 millimeter nuts that go onto the studs that hold the cross member actually onto the transmission mount. That's the Group N mount. You can see it's solid rubber in there, and it's a lot better than the factory mount. All right, guys, so got her on the ground. I just left that whole shifter box thing all attached. And I'm gonna get got an old doormat inside. I'm gonna want to replace anyway. I'm gonna bring it in here, put it in there, and slide her out. There we go. That's all she wrote on getting the WRX transmission and drive shaft out. So there's my drive shaft over there, and of course my mid pipe. And I did thin 3M vinyl gaskets that I just cut out, and they weren't pretty, but they work. And not going to see it anyway. Who cares? And that solved the vibration of it was often in 2nd and 3rd gear at low RPM. It drove me nuts. But anyway, there we go. I am pleased to have the WRX transmission pretty much out and out of the way. And how I'm going to get the STI transmission in, not quite sure yet. It's quite a bit heavier than this transmission. It's a beast. Anyway, hope this video helped you. If you have any questions, please ask questions in the comments, and I'll answer you as fast as I can. Thought I'd show you guys one more thing before I wrap it up tonight. It's been a pretty good day. Got a lot accomplished, at least in my book for me. So these 2 bolts on the back of on the tail housing of the transmission hold this bracket. Okay, that bracket is what hooks onto the mid pipe, or the mid pipe hooks onto it rather, right here. Okay, so on the STI transmission, I noticed that the bracket, so that's on the driver's side. On the STI transmission, that bracket's way over here on the passenger side, it's the same concept, but it's way over here. So I don't know. I might have to make a custom bracket, or I don't know if a company makes one, or if I just don't use it, just bolt it up to the turbine housing, to the I have a small J pipe, and I have this piece here, right? I could probably just bolt that up to the turbine first, and then bolt the mid pipe up directly to that, and then to the axle back, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, here she is, all empty, man. It's like, I feel like it's never going to run again, you know, when it's like this. It's how I felt when I built Firebirds and Camaros and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, my car's never going to run, but it will. It just seems like it won't. Anyway, God bless you guys. Hope something in this video series here helped you guys out.